So welcome to Macro Social Stories, Mr. Nesbitt.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me here. Pleasure meeting you all.
Yes. As we begin our time together, can you share like a fun fact that the average person wouldn't know about you?
Wow. So probably a few things. Hey, most people don't know that I collect sports trading cards, primarily football and basketball. Have a few baseball, but again, my sports typically are football and basketball. I am a lover of the arts, so I do have an art collection, primarily abstract paintings by various artists, and I love to travel. I'm a huge Anthony Bourdain fan, and so all of the journeys and trips that he took, I took with him.
Yeah. How cool is that?
Yeah.
You're a Renaissance man. You're a Renaissance man. I mean, you got football, you got Bourdain, you got modern art.
Yeah.
Holy cool. When do you work?
As we begin our journey together, you said you collect sports cards, you're able to travel. Tell us a little about your journey into social work.
Yeah, it primarily started as a result of where I come from, my history and background. I come from some very challenging circumstances, beginning in my childhood and all the way through early or young adulthood, and so because of some of the experiences that I've had, it just led me to the field of social work and led me into wanting to give back and repay society and its vulnerable populations for some of the blessings that I've received along the way. And so my entire career, I've been in this social work fight, trying to improve the lives of those who are financially vulnerable.
Look at vulnerable populations. Over the past 3 years, we know that globally, a lot of things have been exposed that social workers and other helping professionals have tried to bring attention to. What are some of the things that you have noted that people have called interest to that you have been addressing for years as relates to vulnerable populations?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I've always believed is environment matters, and for me, I believe that environment starts at home, and so if we can help people with achieving a home environment that's conducive to positive outcomes for not just the head of household but the entire family, then we solve a lot of the housing crisis and a lot of the personal crisis that people experience in their lives. Unfortunately, we are in a society where, we make it difficult for people to have, especially people of meager means, to have quality living environments that do a good job of aiding them in producing the solid outcomes or good family outcomes that they deserve. And so that's typically where my fight, or traditionally where my fight throughout my career has been, helping individuals to improve the quality of their housing situation. And so if we do that, then we're doing a good job of putting them on the path to achieving great outcomes, not just for them and their current household members, but for generations. And that's what we really need to be shooting for, is generational transformation in the lives of those that we're working with.
Well, that's exciting. One of the things that, the idea that you focus so much on housing is a breakthrough in social work. Social work tends to deal with supportive housing, for example, or, and works with the homeless and so on, but doesn't work on housing itself. So how did you decide to do that? I mean, obviously, it's incredibly important, and yet it's not what your typical social worker gets involved in.
Well, I must say it actually happened by accident. I had the opportunity, or I was fortunate to join a team early in my career with the Atlanta Housing Authority, who was being led at the time by Renee Lewis Glover. And she had the vision uh, of changing the way public housing was being delivered to those who are financially vulnerable and housing insecure. And, I joined that team, and, she had the vision of not just transforming the housing stock, but also having a solid plan to transform the lives of those living inside of those units as well, so that that development or that transformation moved along a parallel track, and again, not just creating a beautiful housing environment, but also giving individuals the tools and resources that they need in order to maintain that housing stock, as well as changing the quality of lives for the entire household. And so I was fortunate enough to be on that team. She paired me with an individual by the name of Hope Bolden, and to this day, I call her my professional wife, because we've done so much work together in the area of creating human services delivery systems that are paired with housing development or redevelopment strategies that have worked well together and has proven to be a model or a system re-engineering process that has changed lives.
Wow. So you mentioned that alongside the housing development, there were certain tools and techniques that also had to be developed that on the service side or the working with the family side. Could you speak a little bit about that? Because that sounds like incredibly important.
Yes, sure. Again, and so typically the work has been with housing authorities. And one of the things that we first had to realize is that we're not, as a housing authority, we're not direct services providers. But what we must be is great coordinators of services. And so we focused on developing a delivery system that would allow for the team at the Housing Authority to become great coordinators. And also essential in that is making sure that you have a great community engagement and partnership collaboration strategy. Bringing those service providers who are funded to serve the folks that are living in public housing, bringing those organizations together to the table to talk, to develop solution, and to leverage the resources that each one of the organizations have to make the greater impact that we're seeking to make. And so if you can, one, teach people how to be great coordinators of services, and two, get organizations to operate outside of their silos, and get them to the table, and realize that together we can have some monumental impact if we decide to work together in these efforts. And I think that's what we did. We did a great job of in Atlanta, and saw some outcomes early on.
That's really impressive, because the whole thing about engagement, everybody says they engage.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is there anybody who doesn't say they engage?
That's right.
Real engagement, where you show respect for the people who are going to live there, and breaking down those silos is no easy process. It all sounds like good on paper, but I'm sure you didn't accomplish it in a month or two.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't have it's not a light switch. You don't just turn it on and it comes on. It is a true process, right? And you know, if you're an organization and you're used to operating a certain way for a long period of time, it takes a while to get people outside of their comfort zones and get them to viewing the opportunities to do things differently. Because everybody thinks that they have the best model and the best way of doing things, right? And so for individuals or organizations, I understand that, well, maybe it's not the best way, and maybe I should be open to exploring other means of getting the work done. Is you know, it's a challenge, but again, I think when we take the right steps in approaching our organization and also using data to show what the impact could be if we made certain decisions, then I think you increase the chances of being successful.
Well, that's really powerful. Christy, Gary, I don't want to monopolize the questions. I find this very exciting what Mr. Nesbitt's been doing.
As you talk about
Keep going, Steve.
redevelopment of communities, a lot of times when you talk about gentrification and working with vulnerable populations and improving quality of life, I hear you talked about making sure that communities, agencies are involved for long term. How were you able to get all those key stakeholders together at the table, aligned to the mission of long term support?
Yeah. Well, you know, I tell you, I've been fortunate in a lot of ways. You know, not only that we have, I've been in situations where we had great visionary leadership at the organizational level. We had a mayor that had mayors that supported the vision, that also helped us with clearing the way to the change that we were seeking. So I've been in some great situations and scenarios. Again, I've also worked with some great developers who also bought into the vision and was a pioneer in the work, such as Egbert Perry and Noel Khalil out of Atlanta. They understood the importance of the work, and they actually had a real genuine passion for the work. And so they were willing to sacrifice, you know, their organizations and join in the work. You know, Atlanta at the time was also, you know, as you know, it's always been the grounds of a lot of movement that focused on improving the lives of individuals. And so there's always been that heart and that desire, but you know, getting people to realize that there is a different way of doing things. Sometimes we need to really explore, you know, improving our systems and making sure that they are aligned with the needs of today versus the needs of 1960 and 1970, right? So things change, right? People change. And so we have to be willing to, again, always enter in or engage into this constant reevaluation of our processes and operations.
You know, this sounds so important for so many people. The thing that comes up for me is I'm thinking about trust and how do you establish trust? You've got three groups there where you've got your developers, you've got your service providers, and then you've got the community members. And each of them, I'm interested to see what the breakthroughs were where people actually began to trust each other, that there was a better way, that they were willing to work together as opposed to be in conflict or be suspicious of each other. Because again, that's a long haul issue. It's not a short term issue.
Yeah.
Obviously, you made you all did something different here.
Well, I think, as I mentioned earlier, important is being a purpose-driven and data-oriented organization is key. Because if I have the right data, I can pretty much show you the benefit, right? So, for example, for the housing authority or any housing agency that owns a housing stock, I can assure you that if you have people who are residing in your housing stock that's at the house or at the apartment pretty much all day, every day, and they are experiencing traumatic situations, that it's going to impact your maintenance costs. It's going to impact your bottom line, your energy costs, etc. Versus if we are able to get people connected to the services and resources that they need effectively, and helping them with minimizing their burden and their trauma, then the bottom line changes, right? So your maintenance costs decrease, your energy costs decrease, and even on the service provider systems, if we effectively get people connected to those services and resources that addresses or eliminates the trauma, then you don't have repeat or recidivism. And again, you're not spending all of your dollars on the same individuals. You're actually seeing new people and addressing issues that new people have that are coming through your doors. And so you're able to say, well, we're serving more people in a more cost efficient, cost effective manner. So again, the data, and if we can, and you know, and it's interesting. That's one of the, I think one of our weaknesses in the field. We do not take advantage of understanding what the data is telling us and using that to drive the direction of the operations that we are leading. So.
Yeah, well, one of the things, you know, there's data and there's data. And one of the things that I'm really impressed with is you look for data to demonstrate why helping people who are vulnerable, come out of traumatized experiences, and instead of being afraid of them or perceiving them as pathological, that instead you're focusing on, look how much benefit will come from support, and that it actually will improve the housing stock, which is like, you know, in its own, you know, seemingly modest way is revolutionary in terms of a lot of the ways people think about service provision and about housing development with poor people. So it's a big deal what you're doing, what you've done. How have you found it when you left Atlanta? Have you been able to replicate some of that model? Do people buy in this? Because obviously you also talked about, you had political capital behind you. You had mayors, you had, you know, people with real power saying this is a better way to go. So have you been able to, what's the right word, handle the new waters when you know, roll those new waters and when you've gone on to other communities?
Yeah, so each it's a great question, Steve, and I'll tell you that each scenario is different, right? You know, I worked with a number of housing authorities on various projects. Some are less resistant than others. Again, that process starts all over every time. Getting the data that you need to really paint the picture of what the current state is and what the future state could be is always the starting point. And you have to build those trusting relationships. Currently, I am working with the Virgin Islands Housing Authority, and we're doing I'm here doing some systems re-engineering as it relates to our service delivery model. We have just kicked off a $1 billion redevelopment plan for our entire housing portfolio.
Wow.
And we are now implementing a new model for the human transformation component of the work as well. And so it's doing things differently. And so the same legwork that I've had to do in the past, I'm having to do again here. Again, developing the model, getting people to buy in, developing trust and relationships, building that infrastructure that's necessary to support the new model, ensuring that we have the right technology in place, ensuring that we have the relationships, not just with the residents, but with the community members and service providers and other stakeholders, making sure that we have an effective communication strategy and plan in place for keeping residents involved and updated, and making sure that community partners are also seeing what the benefits of the new plans are. And again, making sure that we have a team in place here that has the desire and passion to do this work, right? So and making sure that we have the skill sets. So building that foundation, it's the same process each time. Some places it's a little more difficult than others, but at the end of the day, it's still great work. And I still believe that, if we are able to really show using the data, show the benefit and the impact that we can make, then we can effectuate change in a more effective way.
So the data that's utilized to show the benefits of coming together, bringing about a community that provides quality of life, how are the community assets highlighted? Because sometimes when we look at change, we look at the things that we need to change now, but there are some things in the community that are underutilized or not highlighted in that change process. So how are community assets a part of that data?
Yeah, so it's, you really have to go through a vetting process. You really have to understand or do some asset mapping and understanding exactly what resources and services are available. And just because there is a door open at those organizations doesn't mean that they are organizations that you may want to partner with. So you really have to do some real vetting and understanding what their outcomes have been, or how financially stable they may be, because you don't want to be serving or selling or promoting options and resources to financially vulnerable individuals, and then they go and open those doors and the organization is not meeting the needs in the way that they were expecting. And so you want to be careful, because all that does is chips away at the trust. It makes it even more difficult to develop those trust and relationships that you're definitely going to need in order to be successful in this work.
When do you sleep?
When do I sleep?
Yeah.
Well, I certainly believe in self-care. So I make it happen. I definitely make it happen. But it's a very important process. I mentioned asset mapping earlier. We certainly as part of this process, we always like to understand what assets are available in the communities in which we are trying to redevelop, and also get residents and other individuals connected to. And that's done for a number of reasons. It helps us with developing a comprehensive strategy and approach to the work that we're doing. It also helps us to understand where the gaps are, what's missing, and what's needed, and it helps us with developing, solutions to addressing the gaps. And so it's a critical part of the process, and one that often gets kind of ignored whenever you're doing any type of redevelopment, whether it's bricks and mortar or human transformation that we engage in.
So, this is, you've obviously been doing cutting edge work for a long time here, and yet a lot of the field really needs to learn the type of skills and issues that, and the type of focus that needs to be, that you're developing here. We have a lot of students who listen to these podcasts, and we have faculty who, invite their classes to hear some of this. If you were to think, could you think for a minute about the type of skills that, obviously it took you a number of years to develop the ones you have, and to be able to use the incredible number that you have, but what do you think are some of the key skills that social work students and somebody who goes, wow, I'd love to be able to do what you're doing? What do you think are the key skills that they have to learn and, then develop?
Steve, it's interesting that you asked that question. I've also over past several years served as an adjunct professor at a couple of universities, and one of the, I guess you can call it a pet peeve of mine, or one of the things that just drives me crazy is it never fails. Every semester when I get a new textbook for a course that I'm teaching, and I start reading, it's hard for me to continue to read because I haven't found many textbooks that are written in a manner that teaches the skill sets necessary for the field to develop that bench that we really need. And who has the skill sets that are aligned with today's needs and issues that we are seeing in the lives of vulnerable populations. And it's one of those things that just drives me crazy. We're constantly talking about models and approaches that were developed in, back in history. I call it Stone Age, so Stone Age social work, and we don't do a great job of keeping up with advancements in the field, and I certainly wish that we could do a better job of that. I don't think that we talk enough about the importance of data and having the ability to not just query some data, but also understand what the data is actually telling you.
Speaking my language.
Yeah, and so understanding the story that the data is telling you, and being able to present it in a way that shows benefit and motivates people to want to make different decisions in their lives. And that is one of those challenges that for some reason I think just continues to be a hurdle that we cannot seem to get over. And if you just think about promotional materials that many organizations use to inform or conduct outreach and inform residents or potential clients about services, typically it's, hey, we have this service, come down and register, right? That's typically what you see. It's rare that you see any outreach that says, hey, I have this service, but here's why you should access this service, because it's transformational, because it moves your, based upon this, we know that it moves you from point A to point B, right? Here's the motivation that you need, right? And we just don't do a good job of that in this field, and it's because, again, I don't think that we do a good job of developing that skill set or getting students to understand the real need or benefit to developing that skill set. I can assure you that it's not a skill set that I came out of school with it either. It took some time, but I didn't. I was never, well, while I was in school, I didn't have anyone talking to me about the importance of understanding data and how data, and there is a real healthy marriage between data and outcomes in the lives of vulnerable populations.
Wow, that's very powerful. And I think obviously to get the nuance and flexibility that you have would take some years, but there ought to at least be a foundation where they then are open to it, as opposed to how do you feel?
Right, exactly.
Christy, was there something you wanted to say? Because you said this is dear to your heart.
Well, I love it when someone starts talking about data and mapping, and I like existing information. A lot of times we go into disaster areas or places that we've deemed, developing or third world or whatever we deem to call it now, but people have done a lot of work on the ground, and I think he's covering all of this nicely. But I was asking about the asset mapping part of this, and you've talked about it, but people get scared as soon as you say data, especially our students. They think, stats, math, data, and they don't realize how much power is in that and how much work's already been done.
Right.
So I think anything we can do to make it less scary for them, the better.
Yeah.
And you're doing that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And getting, it is a comfort that needs to be developed, and it takes time, and I was, I'm just as guilty. Whenever someone said data, I thought math, which I knew I was never strong in. So I intentionally stayed away. But
I love pattern recognition. That's what I try. I try to use terms like that with our students, because a lot of us are really good with things like pattern recognition, even verbally, hearing the same thing or seeing the same thing over and over. And you start noticing there's something in common here, or, oh, look, it turns a different color on this part of the map because there's so many of whatever it is we're talking about. But I think it's more tying between the data points and being able to see a color on the map or a chart. And all of us appreciate that when you can actually see the data in a way that's usable. So yes. I love all of this. Thank you.
And or for the conservatives who may be listening, imagine how much money could be saved if we actually minded the data a little better than we have over the past several decades. Right?
This is great. Gary, given time, you want to do what we do for our wrap up with this amazing presentation?
Sure. Thank you for being here on today. And so as we end our conversation today, we'd like to give our guests the last response, if they have any advice for emerging social workers, seasoned social workers, or just challenges for our profession as we move forward in unprecedented times.
Yeah. So I again, we just had a nice conversation about the importance of data. So again, understanding data I think is key. But I also think just as important is getting organizational leaders to understand that innovation is not your enemy. you know, always being open to look at or examine business operations and ensure that we're being innovative in our thought, and understanding that it's okay throughout that process to make mistakes. I mean, we're going to make mistakes. I mean, you know, I once heard this quote that says, if you want me to paint a masterpiece, then you also have to understand I'm gonna drop a little paint on the floor as well from time to time. But I'm going to get you your masterpiece, right? And it just means that, you know, essentially we are, it doesn't mean that we should stop just because we're going to make mistakes, or we shouldn't be afraid to make mistakes as we go about this work. That's the way we learn, and that's the way we really reach maximum effectiveness, by testing and implementing our lessons learned and moving forward. And then the last thing, again, important is environment matters, and the environment starts at the home. And if we can ensure a healthy living environment, both from the standpoint of the bricks and mortar, as well as the reducing the trauma that's inside of the bricks and mortar, then we can ensure better outcomes for vulnerable populations.
Well, thank you for the wealth of knowledge you provided on today, the emphasis on the use of data and how patterns, and how bringing all the key stakeholders to the table to bring about transformational long-term change to improve the quality of life of vulnerable populations. Thank you. And hopefully we're able to share this message to social workers, future social workers, so they can understand that the skills they need, the skills we have are needed as we improve and learn and partner with communities for change. So thank you. Looking forward to having you again. Hopefully we'll have all the technical issues
Okay.
process. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I'll leave you all with what I say to everybody as we engage in this work. Let's go.
Great work. Great work. Let's go together.
Oh.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
That was just terrific.